Hello everybody and welcome to the next episode in my series Top 5, where I talk about the top 5 of a particular subject in prog. My wife comes up with the topics and I just come up with 5 items for my list off the top of my head. So hopefully you guys will enjoy what I have for you today. If you like this concept in this series, please consider subscribing to the channel. I'd really appreciate it. And let's get into the top 5 for today. The top 5 today maybe a bit more specific in its scope than some of the past weeks that I've done, but these are the top 5 albums that feature John Mitchell. John Mitchell just came out with a new album as his project Lonely Robot called A Model Life, and I really love the album. I think it's a really strong one to recommend. And so I kind of threw this suggestion in Jana's ear of wanting to talk about the top 5 albums that I enjoy that feature John Mitchell, because he's been part of so many different bands and projects that I think he has quite a good discography under his belt of albums he's been a part of. And I know this may not be somebody everyone knows as well, but maybe this will be a good starting point for some references for some albums that you could check out on your own time if you like John Mitchell and what he has to offer, or interested in a newer prog musician and what he may have to showcase for you guys. And John Mitchell is a great singer-songwriter. He also plays guitar. He's the main guitar player on most of these albums, I would say. And he's just a really great artist that I really want to spotlight. So album number 5 on the list is Arena and their album Double Vision. Now, I really like Double Vision. It's a more recent album in their catalog. I think most people would probably go to like The Visitor or Contagion, I think, is another one of their big albums. But I really like Double Vision. It's their latest album they came out with. I believe it came out in 2018. And it's just a really strong set of songs. It has a good strong hooks and great songwriting, but there's also some really cool, expansive, progressive rock on it. The last track is this big, over 20-minute epic called The Legend of Elijah Shade that goes through so many different movements and moods. You get to hear John Mitchell on guitars and backing vocals throughout the album. Paul Manzi is the vocalist here. Clive Noland on keyboards and backing vocals. Kylan Amos on bass and Mick Pointer on drums. Really cool album. I like Arena. I feel like sometimes their overly theatrical style can throw me off a bit, and especially in the early parts of their career, they sounded quite a bit like Marillion, but I feel like in more recent albums, they branched out a little bit, have a little bit of a heavier edge to some of their music, and have explored other styles and really come into their own. But a really excellent neo-prog album that is recommended here. Album number 4 on my list is Lonely Robot's The Big Dream, the second of the Astronaut trilogy of Lonely Robot albums. Of course, Lonely Robot started as a project from John Mitchell that was this big trilogy of sci-fi concept albums that linked together. Please Come Home, I believe, is the name of the first one. This is The Big Dream, and the third one is Under Stars. Really cool albums that I really enjoy. I picked The Big Dream, which is the second in the trilogy, just because I feel like it takes a leap from the first album into a bit more stronger songwriting, a bit more prog influence into the music, and I think it just really deepens the project in a great, satisfying way. All the pieces are really strong, some great sci-fi type sounds, lush soundscapes. Sometimes I feel like I'm drifting off into space, and it's a really cool vibe, and just some really strong, cool, compact songs. And so really the lineup for this album is it's all John Mitchell on all the instrumentation, and then you got Craig Blundell on drums, and then a couple vocal people coming in as guest stars, Bonita McKinney, Kim Sivor, and Lee Ingleby on narration. So, but a really cool album that's mostly John Mitchell doing all of the work here, and it just sounds really fantastic and beautiful. But all the Lonely Robot albums are recommendations, but I wanted to mention that one here. Number 3, I wanted to mention Kino and the album Picture. This is a really cool near super group, really strong selection of musicians. We've got John Mitchell, of course, on guitar and lead and backing vocals. John Beck, who I believe comes from It Bites, on keyboards and lead and backing vocals. Pete Truavas from Marillion comes aboard on bass and bass pedals and backing vocals. And Chris Maitland, who used to play for Porcupine Tree, on drums and backing vocals. So really cool lineup of musicians from different projects, and they come together in a really cool way. And Kino there's definitely the prog influence. It opens with a longer extended piece called Loser's Day Parade, before getting into some shorter, more poppier centric tracks. I think it's more of like a progressive pop style, largely throughout the album, but it's really well-crafted songwriting. I think this is the wheelhouse John Mitchell does really well with, and some great collaboration and some great tracks that just sonically are really fun to listen to, really nice sound, and really great playing. So, what more can you get? It's a really great, strong album that I've really loved over the course of the years where I've heard it. So, next I wanted to mention Frost and their album Day and Age. This is number 2 on my list. And Frost, it's hard to pick a Frost album because I just love their whole catalog, but Day and Age is their most recent album, and I've been really digging it lately. I think it's really fantastic. It came out last year and was one of my favorite albums of the year, and probably if you were putting a gun to my head, I'd say my favorite Frost record is the first one, Million Town, but I feel like this one is good for this list because I'm trying to talk about albums that feature John Mitchell prominently, and I feel like he's more prominently featured on this album. I feel like as Frost continues onward, it becomes more collaborative, where the first album was really Jim Godfrey really doing the bulk of the work on the writing front and doing a lot of the singing as well, and his keyboards are all over. But I feel like John Mitchell really adds to the proceedings here, not just with guitars, but also with some vocal stuff, and I think he's also involved in the writing and arrangements. Just a wonderful album, just has so many great, strong tracks. Day and Age, the title track, is just a great near 12-minute song that goes through so many different movements and just has a great style and sound to it. Terrestrial sounds very John Mitchell inspired, a shorter, more compact track. I love the ending pair of tracks, Kill the Orchestra into Repeat to Fade. Just beautiful, expansive ending with a very dramatic, cool style to it. Feels very modern, feels very fresh, and I just love Frost and all of their work, so this is a strong recommendation. Really love the contributions. And what's interesting about it, even though John Mitchell is known for his guitar work, they really purposefully don't have any guitar solos on the album, so you don't really hear him soloing on his guitar, but you hear him on guitars making really cool arrangements, and it's a cool album for that fact, that they're really devoting to the song and not just playing show-off virtuoso solos, which they could also do and have done in the past, but really focusing in on what should serve the song the best, and I really appreciate that aspect and find it to be a really unique, fun, cool record. And then my number 1 John Mitchell featured album is It Bites album, The Tall Ships. This is just an album that means a lot to me. I discovered it back like when I was in college and just fell in love with this record. It was somewhat of a resurrection of It Bites, who were a popular band from late 80s, maybe early 90s, that somewhat broke up after a string of really cool progressive pop albums, and this is their coming back to the forefront with John Mitchell as the lead chair here, and he's joined by John Beck on keyboards and Bob Dalton on drums, and it's a really cool lineup, and it's that really cool progressive pop style. The sound is just really excellent. I love the opening. It's just so fun and infectious and has some great vocal harmonies and things, and it just continues on. Every song is a gem. I love The Wind That Shakes the Barley, which is a little bit over 8 minutes and goes in a lot of cool proggy directions, and it ends with a fair epic, This Is England, which goes through so many different styles and moods as well. It's just a really great sonic album, and it's one of my favorites of all time. I just really adore this record, and I think it's really strong. And I know John Mitchell is especially proud of the follow-up to this record, Map of the Past, which is also excellent, also deserves to be on a list like this, but my personal preference is just The Tall Ships because of the impact it had when I first heard it. So that's my list of John Mitchell albums. Hopefully you guys appreciated that, and if you haven't heard of him before, it makes you curious to check out his music. These are some great albums, and so please let me know in the comments if you're familiar with John Mitchell's work. What are your favorite albums that feature John Mitchell, and what would you suggest for a future top 5? Those are things I'd love to hear about in the comments. So thank you guys so much for joining me. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode, and I'll hopefully catch you in the next top 5. Bye!